Hello, and welcome to Money Mondays, powered by the Joseph Business School, where you can tune in every first and third Monday of the month to hear a new wealth creation topic. Be sure to subscribe to our JBS YouTube channel and share these podcasts with your friends and family. I'm your host, Geil Thompson. Today on our segment, we have Gwen Cohen, First Vice President and Wealth Advisor at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. Gwen Cohen has dedicated her entire career to serving the financial needs of high net worth individuals, multi-generational families, and small business owners here in the Chicagoland area and throughout the country. Gwen was deeply influenced by the values of her great-grandmother, Ida, who you'll hear about today. She strongly encouraged every woman, and even Gwen, to especially follow their financial dreams of being financially independent and responsible in their financial decisions. With Ida as her inspiration, Gwen set out to follow a profession where she could educate her clients about the importance of financial concepts and strategies, helping them to make significant and profound impacts on the quality of their lives. As a wealth advisor, Gwen takes pride in her ability to effectively communicate advanced concepts and put them into action. Her mission is to empower her clients to make informed decisions about their future. Also, Gwen focuses on creating long-term trusting relationships with her clients to help them simplify their lives so that they may pursue their passion and enjoy the wealth that they've earned. Gwen earned her undergrad degree in business from Tuskegee University and her MBA from Northwestern Kellogg School of Management here in Chicago. For her experience and dedication to her clients, she's received numerous distinctions and professional accolades from the Chicago Foundation for Women, the U.S. Department of the Army, and Morgan Stanley. Most recently, she was recognized as a 2016 Maker at Morgan Stanley, an award that honors game-changing women leaders within the firm and in the industry. Throughout her career, Gwen has been profiled in a variety of media outlets, including the Chicago Sun-Times, Indigo, Chicago Defender, Chicago Metro News, Black Enterprise, Ebony Magazine, and WTTW's Chicago Tonight. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Gwen Cohen of Morgan Stanley on the subject of wealth, wealth creation, and wealth accumulation. Stay tuned. Gwen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So I want to start with asking you, what is your definition of wealth? What can you provide us practically as a definition for wealth?
So there is one definition of wealth that it's a financial definition which basically looks at everything that you own minus everything that you owe.
Okay.
And that's basically what's considered net worth.
Okay.
And that's one measure, but every person will have a different definition for wealth. And I think that's the most important part of it, starting with where a person is and how they define it, and what success looks like in that area for them. That's where we begin.
Awesome. And can you share with us different examples of clients that you've helped along the way? You've been in the industry for years.
Well, it's true that a lot of people have achieved wealth. Some of my clients are not looking for wealth. So there are two things that we look to do for our clients. We want to simplify their lives and help them preserve the things that they treasure. Sometimes it's money. It could be a business. It could be an art collection. Sometimes it's treasuring a family, especially if there's been a tragedy. So in addition to doing the other things for that family, we certainly want to help them do that. But another example of someone who has achieved wealth with our help, I'm thinking of a professional, very successful, who decided, I'm just going to stay focused on my career, wasn't paying attention to 401k plan assets, wasn't paying attention to stocks that he owned before he went to work. And it turned out that he was looking to sell something from his portfolio to buy an asset.
Yes.
And the recommendation was, let's look to a tax advisor, make sure that we're able to get the right information for this before you sell the asset. It turned out there was a different way for him to sell that asset, and there was a different way for him to avoid paying taxes on it. So we were able to, he ended up with a lot more money as a result of it, and as it turns out, one of the solutions was a way to give away some of it, which was another goal.
That's good. So in your example there, you were sharing with us different ways in which you help your clients. So if there's a client who comes into your office, how do you assist them?
Well, the first thing is, There's some work before a client comes into my office.
Okay.
Because if the first thing we want to do is honor their time and honor our time. So I want to know in advance, what is it that you want to achieve? Tell us about who you are, what your family unit looks like. Who's important to you? What's important to you? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What is your tax situation? What is the tax burden? What is your feeling about taxes?
Yeah.
Are you charitable? All of those things are important before we sit down, because in many cases, by the time that person sits with us, we may have two or three other people in the room to make sure they get the full value of that conversation, to make sure that resources that I need to pull are right in front of them. And that's what really motivates somebody to say, yes, that's a dream, and I know I can do it because I have a vision for the way I can.
Wow.
So that's the most important thing. And then when we sit down, we do a discovery and make sure that we look at all of the implications. How much risk do you want to take? How much risk are you already taking if you own a business? It's one of the pieces that outside of a holistic practice like ours is a holistic practice, it's easy for somebody to get used to doing things in a certain way, and nobody's asked them all those questions. And when you ask them the question, are you okay? You know, are you okay with this? They'll say, oh, yeah, I'm okay. But then there's some other things that I'm thinking, what are we missing here?
Yeah.
So the key is getting a really good understanding of what's going to allow that person or that family to really run the full marathon.
That's good.
Because that's what it is.
That's good. And so when you look at your finances, it's beyond just a sprint. We're thinking marathon.
Absolutely, because there are two things that generally associated with wealth. No matter how a person defines wealth, the idea is that they know is something they want to achieve, but they also want to preserve it. Nobody wants to do all of this and throw it away.
Okay, that's good. And so now in talking in that of achieving and preserving, what are the different dialogues as far as conversation you would have with a client who's interested in accumulating wealth versus the one who's trying to preserve what it is that they have?
So a person who's interested in accumulating, we start with where they are. What do you own? What do you owe? What do you want these assets to do for you? And when you reach that goal, what do you want the wealth to do for you?
Okay.
Because that's going to help us understand what are the options that are available that allow us to do it in the most efficient way. You know, we have a tax law that creates opportunities for us. So it's not something to be afraid of. It's something to embrace. It's also something to understand so that you can get there. The other part of it, I think, is just being prepared for the journey, for the marathon, if you will. And I'm hoping today we'll have a chance to take a journey so that we can help people understand the way to do it with as much joy as they can have. I'm privileged that for over 30 years, with the help of a lot of people, I've been able to enjoy a career that and I use the word enjoy, that I'm able to help people and help them achieve their goals. One of the most important things in that journey is understanding there are a few things that need to be in place. And it's helpful for four things to always be present.
Okay.
And one of the first things that I think is particularly going to be helpful for a person to do is make sure that they have a good understanding of their credit reports and do it often. These are things, in some ways, it's similar to having a doctor's visit, a checkup. Yeah, and then, you got it. And then there are things you do in between.
Yeah.
So making sure that you get a credit report. There are credit reports available throughout the year. There are 3 available. So if a person gets a credit report and runs it every 4 months, you got one for each of those trimesters during the year. What's really important is do it for your children too, because if a child's credit is tampered with, it can create a lot of problems. So doing that and doing that religiously. One of the other things that is particularly helpful as well is making sure that all of your beneficiaries are updated. And I'll give you an interesting example. Imagine a family member who loses a loved one, and as they're figuring things out, uncover that the beneficiary of a 401k plan died 3 years earlier.
Wow.
These are real life examples.
Yeah.
And these are not the things that people have conversations on at a cocktail party. Nobody says, here's a tip, please make sure that it doesn't happen in your family.
Yes.
So being able to update those. Another one is divorce. Unfortunately, with a marriage, when a marriage dissolves, very often the beneficiaries are not updated. And there's no coming back saying, well, you know, he really intended to say this. There's no way to do anything to help that. The third thing is really to make sure that all of your wills and trusts are not only in place, but they are updated, and also powers of attorney. Who's the person you can identify that can step into your shoes in the event that you're out of the country or out of consciousness?
Okay.
It's expected that 3 out of 5 of us on the planet now will be out of consciousness, whether it's 2 days, 2 weeks, or longer.
Okay.
Who is it that we want to step into those shoes? And then the final step of that is to fund for those emergencies. And once you use the money, make sure you put it back so it'll be there for the next time, because life does just happen.
That's awesome. And the information you're giving I believe it's relevant to the topic of wealth and how we're talking about helping our Money Monday audience create wealth. But there's something that you mentioned, and I want to stay in that vein. And
Sure.
you talked about that today you're going to take us on a journey. But what's funny is you have a very special story about how your journey started.
Oh, wow.
And it started with your great-grandmother, Ida. Can you tell us how important is she to your life story?
Ida Whitfield Satterfield, a woman born in 1875.
Wow.
She married Fletcher, born in 1863.
Okay.
Memorable year. They got married in 1894, I think. They had a son and then a daughter who became my grandmother, and 6 more daughters.
Big family.
And in the midst of the winter, more than half of her kids had the flu. And she goes, how did I get myself into this mess? Mr. Fletcher, my great-grandfather, was away building America's railroads. So he wasn't there as often. And she says, I got to do something about this because I can't put my children through this. So she decided I'll teach them how to prepare for adulthood.
Okay.
So she taught them 3 values. First of all, be financially savvy and responsible. The second one is to think about the size of your family before you build it. There must be a hint in there somewhere.
That's good.
And the third one was find a way to give back to the good earth, because she relied on a community that supported her and she believed in philanthropy. She was also a woman who had a prosperity consciousness.
Okay.
And she was doing everything she could to make sure they got everything they needed. But people started to notice her children are different. What is it that you're teaching your children that we don't know?
Yes.
So she ended up teaching the civic leaders, and they were living on the west side of Chicago at the time, but they were able to buy a home before African Americans were allowed to show up at a closing.
Wow.
And it was because of that discipline that she had, and she taught them how to do that. But it was interesting that in the process of doing that, people, push back and say, why are you teaching your daughters how to do this? Why are you telling your daughters? She made a comment that came to me through one of her daughters, my aunt. She says, Ida promised that more than one of her daughters would likely lose a husband to a war or something else dreadful.
Wow.
And then those words that people sometimes shudder with. Nobody should be both in mourning and in the dark at the same time. Now, how is that related to today? We're in mourning in different ways today. We're in mourning when a daughter goes off to college. We're in mourning when we lose a loved one and we don't have somebody there. We're in mourning sometimes when, like close to 6 million people in this country today, a family member is ravaged with Alzheimer's. We're in mourning, and in some cases we're in the dark if we don't know where their wills and trusts are, if we don't know who has powers of attorney. So her notion of being in mourning and in the dark and preparing for life as it happens has a great relevance today. How does it influence me? My mother and father, my grandmother and grandfather was so embedded in her philosophies that they taught those generations how to do what Ida taught her children how to do.
Wow.
So I'm one of 5. I'm number 4 out of 5. And we were not middle class when I decided I was going to go to Tuskegee. And our parents, neither one who went to college, had decided all 5 of us would have an undergraduate degree. And my father says, you don't really have any choice. You just get it. We're going to provide every opportunity for you to get it. But it taught us some very important values that literally propelled us to a lot of decisions. So that a year and a half after I got out of Tuskegee, I was barely 22. No, I wasn't even 22 years old. I bought a condo. And it was because I could visualize myself owning it. And my father's philosophy was, like Ida's, believing is seeing. You have to believe you can do it first. So when I sit with a client, I want to be sure that I'm visualizing what that person is visualizing and showing them then how to move ahead with the goals that they have in mind.
Wow. That's such an eye-opener for someone who was born in the 1800s. I mean, the principles in which she's taught you are so relevant to today. And many times it's funny that we didn't think that our generations before us even knew principles like that. And for you to say that you came from a great-grandmother who taught you such words of wisdom, that's so impactful. And it's brought you to where you are today. I mean, it's reflected.
It was Ida's wisdoms. I call them ideologies.
Okay.
It was ideologies that helped me have confidence in my financial awareness when I was in college, so that I had enough money to say, I'm going to buy this. And that's another story around the time I bought it. The person who had an opportunity to sell me this condo unit didn't visualize me as buying it.
Yeah.
I came in, I probably looked like I was 15 or 16 years old. I had my hair all here and in short on a bike. And I saw this sign. The sign says there's a conversion. And I said, I want to go in. So I parked my bike and I said, I want to see a two-bedroom unit. Two-bedroom unit. I didn't even have a two-bedroom apartment at the time. He flung the papers across the table saying, take a look. When he came back, I had already bought it. I could visualize it. I sat and I said, oh, I don't want to keep paying rent.
Wow.
If I have a down payment, I'll be a little bit more than what I'm paying for rent, and I own something that is an appreciating asset.
Wow.
Appreciating asset. That's how it happened. So I'm right out of college. And it was Ida's confidence in the stories that she sent down from 2 generations earlier that allowed me to say, I'm confident that I know what I'm doing and this is a good business decision.
That's good. And you referenced appreciating asset. For those of our audience who are not familiar with that term, can you explain what is an appreciating asset?
An appreciating asset is one that increases in value over time the longer you hold it.
Okay.
Real estate is generally one of them. We saw a rough patch back in 2008 and 2009 where values went down. But we have to understand that real estate is a non-liquid asset. So you don't buy it today with the idea you might sell it next week. I was in it to own a place, so it was a long-term investment for me.
Yes.
And the fact that it increases in value over time means that you could afford to have a mortgage on it because you then were investing money in an appreciating asset as compared to one that depreciated. So if I put $50,000 on a credit card and the things that I bought with that card were clothes or toys, things that would depreciate in value, then that may not help me get my wealth as soon as I would want it.
So what would be an example of a balanced approach?
A balanced approach in terms of growing wealth.
Yes, growing wealth.
We talked about the definition of wealth. If it's okay with you, on this journey, we're going to go back and visit Ida.
Go ahead.
Ida had a definition of wealth.
Okay.
She says to have wealth is to have enough. And when my mom first told me about that, I said, just what does that mean? And then she talked about the components of enough. ENUF.
Okay.
The energy enough to say, I'm committed to doing this. In the case of my buying that little condo, I'm going to just rally all of my resources so that I can get it done once I have a plan. The second thing is the nerves to stick with that plan despite all of the distractions. Distractions today might be a pop-up on my iPhone that basically says I should go to the deals of the day.
Or I should just buy that today.
Yes, yes. And it's an easy distraction. The U is understanding the laws of the universe.
Okay.
And one of the laws is there are appreciating assets and depreciating assets. Another law is I got to make sure I balance my risk in order to get this. Just because I want a return like this, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm willing to take the risk to do that. There's another law that says all we give out comes back. That's one of Ida's laws of philanthropy. So understanding all of those laws. And then the fourth piece of that, the F, is focus.
Okay.
It's giving intentional attention to everything that you will need to do that. Because it's not all about money. It's not all about getting rid of debt. It's having the right mindset. It's having the right people around you who really know how to help you champion that cause. It's about staying focused and getting rid of all those other distractions. It's thinking about some of the things that plague everything. Taxes.
Yeah.
Thinking about things like turmoil around the world that change the way we look at things. All of those things get in the way. So when we talk about the balanced approach, it's focusing as much on the strengths that we have, but also recognizing that what it's really going to take to get us through the finish line to that marathon is recognizing that we won't have all of the strengths. So that balance comes in making sure that somebody else on the team is going to be able to pick up on the things that are not strengths, that are absolutely necessary in order for us to get there.
Gwen, you know what I like about the way that you speak when you talk about wealth is one thing you mentioned is that it's not about just the money. It's about thinking about all the other components beyond the money. It's the family, it's the relationships, it's about that inner circle. And so if you can you talk about how important is your inner circle in achieving your financial goals or even achieving the desire of wealth, whatever you desire for wealth to be? Because as you stated, for Ida, wealth was, I just want to have enough. And so how important is the inner circle?
Inner circle is critical because these are the people that get into your head, and these are the people that you can influence by getting into their heads to help you get there.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. This family, husband and wife, have 2 kids, both daughters, and their oldest daughter was approaching her 17th birthday and said, you guys have enough money. I want a new car for my 17th birthday.
Okay.
The parents said, we'll talk about that later. So they were already on the schedule to talk with me, and I said, let's talk about it. But because when I sit down and talk with clients and I understand who's important and what it's important to them, what goals they have, and they say, this is really going to throw our plan off track. So we came up with a plan for them. They were already familiar with it. It started out as a game. But the plan was to sit with both of the daughters, but in this case, sit with one of them and say, these are the things that we do for the family. And you want a car. And they asked her all the questions. How much is a car going to cost? What else do you need? So they were walking through the process of owning a car, not renting, for that process. And as they walked through that, they said, oh, okay. So they came up with a price for all of it and a price for maintenance every year. And then they asked, which of the items on this list of things we're already doing are you comfortable asking your sister and the rest of us to give up so that you can have the car?
Okay.
And she
I think that's
said,
a good approach. Parents, are you listening? Take these notes. This is good.
Yeah. What do you give up? It's a trade-off. It really is a trade-off. And one of the things that she decided to do was she came back to them a few months later and she said, if it's okay, I'm going to get a job. A year later, she had enough money to help with a car.
That's good.
7 years later, she had bought a condo.
Wow.
What the inner circle did for their daughter is to help her prepare for life as an adult in the same way that Ida's children were prepared for life. What it also did, though, was it influenced their youngest daughter, who was watching, saying, oh, if she gets a car at 17, maybe I want to go to Europe with a car. It literally helps you to make sure that that inner circle is on your team and does the right thing for you to make. So you're right, it's really about a lot more than just the money.
And you know what, too, what I like about that story is beyond what the parents were also teaching, I think is a lesson that I just pulled out of it for myself, is they were teaching a lesson on ownership.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
And beyond just the idea of owning, the responsibility that comes with ownership.
There you are.
I thought that was the most important piece that I would say that even if for me, when I teach my children those lessons, it would be the idea of this is the cost of ownership.
Absolutely.
So I need you to understand and welcome into mom and dad's world where it's not just about you get to tell me you want a car, but let's really talk about that total cost and what are you willing to give up in order to attain it.
Here's the other thing that's really great about that. The parents stayed on track.
It didn't throw them off track. That's good.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And the next time they started this,
that's good.
They started this game at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we're going to sit and talk. These are the things we have planned for the next year. We're going to do this for you, Monica. We're going to do this for you, Jessica.
That's good.
And then they said, is there anything on this list that we need to eliminate? And now everybody keeps quiet. And they say, thank you very much, Mom and Dad.
We'll share this responsibility. Let's make it a family thing now.
So they've made it a
That's
gratitude.
good.
They make it a gratitude
That's
event.
good. Can you think of different other examples beyond this one and different conversations about even with your inner circle?
For helping
you attain some things.
I can think of another one, and this one has a very similar tone.
Okay.
It has a deeper meaning for several reasons. A client who had been with me for a long time had just retired, and he and his wife went off to their home in the sunset, and all of the things they had planned to do were perfectly in place. In 2009, we know what happened with the real estate market. We know what happened with mortgages that went into homes that went into foreclosure. And they had the surprise of their lives.
Okay.
They also had 2 kids already grown and settled. Both of their children were homeowners, and their daughter and son-in-law came to them. And he called me as soon as he got that call, and he says, we may need to raise $380,000.
Wow.
He left a voicemail, and I said, okay, tell me more. Send me an email and just tell me more. The decision was for him and his wife to decide, will we help our daughter and son-in-law, very capable, very professionals, have lived a great life so far in their 40s, have traveled the world. Will we help them save their home? And I want to talk about this because it's one of the things that frighten parents very often. And it makes parents feel guilty sometimes that they haven't prepared their children to be adults.
The mantle. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I had forgotten about all of the things that went into it. I do remember that we did a lifestyle management consult for his daughter and son-in-law. That's something that I offer because it's a part of intergenerational wealth planning.
Okay.
So they agreed to do it. The interesting thing is the conversations I have with their children, I can't share with the parents. So the parents set the rules, but that's one rule I can't break. What was interesting out of this whole thing is that he decided the decision that he made, because it was their decision. Do we torpedo our retirement and suddenly raise $380,000 to save our daughter and son-in-law's home?
Okay.
Or do we do something different? And he was concerned about that relationship. And I was concerned because remember, one of the things I want to do, who are your children? I'd never met them before. What's important to you and who's important to you? So the question that comes into his mind is, what are the values that are important to me? And the value that was important to him was parity. He wanted to be sure that he treated his son and his daughter the same way.
Okay.
So to have an advisor who can come back and say, what are the implications of this? He basically said, the decision came when you asked me to answer this question and to come back later and tell me. I asked the question, what role will you play if you save this home?
Yeah.
Will you be landlord or will you be dad? And he said that was the question that changed his mind.
And speaking of intergenerational wealth plans, when should families begin the dialogue of, you know what, we've been handling it thus far, but now it's time for us to introduce you to our coach so that you can see how mom and dad keep on track, how we meet our goals, and so that now it's time for you to begin to start planning for your life. What would you say is a good age for parents to start introducing the idea of, now let's get you a coach, a wealth advisor?
There's several answers to that.
Okay.
And there's one answer that's closer to what Ida did, which is to start our children when
Start
they're
them
young.
early. Okay.
And there are opportunities to do that because a number of my clients have 529 plans for their children. They are setting aside money for education. When they start increasing their allowance, they're also saying, this is how you divide your allowance. This is fun stuff, this is saving stuff, and this is to give to charity.
That's good.
So we start early with them. But in terms, and they have access to that. So when we do an event, we occasionally do events where we invite children of all ages. I have some clients, I have one that I'm thinking of right now who's 43 and he's been with me since he was 18, 19. Yeah, since he was 19. And he now owns a business. He started early. His parents started him very early. So it's never too early to start. The one thing that we offer our clients is we offer financial fitness for their children. There's an elementary school, there's a high school version, there's one for college, and there's one for adults.
Okay.
We offer it to them, and we encourage them to do it online, 20-minute sessions each. And that's one of the ways that when the child comes to the parent with a conversation like, oh, I want to buy this, I want to buy that. Now the parents can say, hey, let's go back to this module. Let's take a look at that. You remember they talked about that? Have you checked your credit score? So they walk them through all of those things before they start to look at it because they know how important it is.
Okay. So what is financial fitness?
Financial fitness is really the tools that are needed in order for you to grow and preserve wealth.
Okay.
And it has the same implications as physical health. So that you have everything that you need in order to grow and accumulate wealth to make sure that you have the ability to run the race for the long haul.
Okay. And why do you believe people do not engage with a financial advisor or even a wealth advisor? What's blocking that relationship where there's that coach and there's the student relationship?
The student relationship?
Meaning, like, for instance, Serena Williams has her coach. She's had
That's
her
a good
coach
example.
for years.
That's a great example.
And so I'm talking about that she's catapulted to a level where she's an Olympian, but she's never let go of her coach. Why is it that people don't see the need to have a financial coach?
I'm not sure I know the reason that they don't do it early. And I've asked a lot of people, and many say, well, I never really thought I needed it. I'm a professional. I have 2 degrees. I should know how to manage my money. But it's really not as much about money as it is a holistic approach. How do you make sure that everything is being done properly?
Okay.
So when we look at things that a person really needs to be financially successful and just to have financial peace of mind, there are 3 questions that need to be asked and answered. The first one is, am I okay right now? So if I were that 22-year-old on a bike ready to buy this condo, the first question I had to answer, and I didn't think about it at the time, was, am I okay to even make this decision? Because they want earnest money.
Got it.
Am I in a position to make all of the financial decisions that I make? One of the things that we realize that almost everything that we do has implications financially. We walk into a supermarket and we come in to buy one item.
I know, and then you leave out with a whole cart.
A cart full.
Yes.
That's a financial decision.
Yes.
How do I do that? Sometimes you're better off going to a smaller store where you can't get a lot.
Or just order it off Amazon and just click the one thing.
So it's answering that question.
Yeah.
Am I okay right now? And it's not always easy for a person who's on a track to do something else to really answer that question. Sometimes a professional needs to help ask that.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example of a case where I'm sitting with, they weren't even clients at the time, a husband and wife, they had just retired, had grandchildren. We're sitting just talking about things. And we're in the discovery phase because I already had the general, and I said, tell me about your children. They have 3 children and they have 4 grandchildren. And I said, tell me about each of your grandchildren, because they said the thing that's important to me is to make sure that my grandchildren enjoy a good education and a good life.
Okay.
And I said, tell me about each one. And I started with the oldest. And when I asked him, tell me about Jan, he paused, and I was a little uncomfortable because, you know, for somebody to pause about 10 seconds, you wonder, what is it? The first thing that he said after that is, nobody's ever asked me about her. She's a special needs child.
Wow.
And he didn't so much want to talk about the money. He wanted somebody to help him get a trust attorney.
Wow.
That could update he put off getting his wills and trusts because he didn't know how to handle Jan. So when you think about the use of a coach, and that's part of the role that I play, it's in helping them to do the things that need to be done. And in many cases, once we identify the coach and know who they work with, instead of saying, oh, you need to talk to your trust attorney about that. Our approach in my practice is, since you told me it's okay, I'm going to email your coach, circle you in, we're going to set a target date.
Yes.
And that way we come back and this will be off our plates in 6 weeks.
That's good.
So that whole coaching thing was not about the money. It was really about having answered that question, you know, am I okay?
Yes.
He was not even okay getting the documents done until he could visualize how Jan was going to be handled in that document.
Yes.
And then the third question, what did I miss? And that's why many people need a coach. Even in the work that I do. There's sometimes, and I have an advisor that works with me alongside, and I run things. There are things that I need to make sure we talk about. A person may have a parent who's aging. They have a chance to, person has lots of money already. What do we do to help mom? I have a client who said, I didn't know what to get her, and she kept saying, I don't want you to get me anything. He made a commitment that he would cover a long-term care insurance premium for his mom, and that was the most precious thing he could give to her. So now he says, Mom, if you needed it, if you, God forbid, broke a hip or something and you needed to be in the hospital, you got a concierge service, they will call you, they will make sure everything's in place, and then I'll be there. But it's not worrying about that. So she told him, she says, that's the most precious gift I could have. But you gotta make sure that you're thinking about those things and you ask the question, what am I missing? It wasn't so much about him. He's not yet old enough. He just got out of medical school a few years ago. But what am I missing with the people that I care about? This is really all about relationships. It's all about that inner circle of people that you care about. How do you show that you care about someone who, like my mom and dad, said, oh, you guys do enough for us already. Don't do anything else.
Okay.
And then you got to figure out what is it that you do for them that make them feel special and appreciated, and also make you feel pretty good about it too.
Yeah. And so what we want to do in this moment, we want to ease the tension or even that nervousness that many of our Money Monday audience may be experiencing about even engaging in a conversation with someone like you. And so let's take them on a journey.
Nothing to fear. Nothing.
Let's take them on this journey. If we were to come into your office, Money Mondays is a person. So Money Mondays comes into your office today. What is this relationship like? What are some things you'd ask us?
So there's a little pre-work. So once we understand, then there's a discovery.
Okay.
So the first step is really understanding what are the key goals that you have? What is the time horizon on it? What are the assets that you have support them? What are the other assets you have that you don't want to be a part of your goal? So that may be a home. It may be a second home. These are things that are not going to fund your goal. What are the resources that you're willing to commit to making this happen?
Okay.
And then I ask the question, what scares you? I ask the question, what is it that keeps you up at night?
Time
what is
horizon.
it that fries? Yes, all of those things. Because remember, if I'm going to be on this journey with this family,
yes,
I've got to know what's getting in their way so that we can say, okay, we're not going to go down that street to run this marathon.
Yes.
We're going to make a detour.
Okay.
And one of the other critical things is helping people understand that sometimes they want to get to the fork in the road, and then they want somebody to say, do I turn right or turn left? Our world is so different now, and things change so often now, that in many cases, when you understand that person and what motivates them, your advice is going to be, don't go to the fork in the road.
Okay.
The advice is going to be, you need to take a left turn before you get to the fork in the road, because when you get to the fork in the road, there's a roadblock down the left side and there's a roadblock down the right side.
Okay.
So somebody that has the vision and having been through that is able to better direct someone, and they feel good about the fact that you can help them do that.
Okay. Gwen, I think time horizon is a big piece for most people because I've often heard people say, I think it's too late. I may have waited too late. Or am I even at the right place? Because sometimes everybody wants to give the example of if you started at 30 and you compound until you're 60.
Everybody does that. Everybody does
It's like,
it.
but what do you tell that person who may be at that fork where they're like, I'm at that golden age of 50. And so what is my next plan of action? How do I assess where I am? How do I go from here? How do I secure what I have? Would you tell them that it's okay? Let's start with where you are. It's never too late.
So there are some things that to meet a person's goal, and that's why we have to understand how each person defines wealth or how each person defines financial success, because it's different. If somebody came to me and they're already 6 months away from retiring and they say, I
a good
want
one.
$1 million by the time I retire, and there's no way to get it. I'm not a liar about that. You have to say,
Yes.
well, given what you're sharing with me, that may not be a reasonable goal. The one thing that our practice does in this process is that we literally run stress tests once we put everything in place, so that we can say, you know, given where you are now, you've got a 75% probability of doing that, or you got a 40% probability of doing that. So let's go back and revisit those goals. So there will likely be 3 things on that list. When we start dreaming, there are serious goals for the things that we absolutely need in retirement, in the case of this person, and then the things we want to do. So let's look at it this way. If you were planning a vacation, you're going to be very specific about that.
Of course.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now.
Okay. Give me a destination.
Paris.
Paris. Okay. She wants to go to Paris.
Uh-huh.
So you can't drive.
No, we got to fly.
You got to fly. So when do you want to go? How long do you want to stay? How are you going to get there? You're going to have to fly to do that. Where are you going to stay? You're going to stay with friends? You're going to stay in a hotel? What kind of hotel? What about your meals? Do you have friends that you can have meals with every day? Are you going to pay for dinner?
Eat out, yeah.
Or are you going to invite your friends who live there to join you for dinner? So you're going to walk through all of that in your plan.
That's good.
So that you can determine how long you can stay there before you make the trip. Retirement is a similar journey.
That's good.
It's a similar journey. How long do I intend to stay retired? It's interesting. Someone asked me when I was speaking at this session, and he raised his hand and he says, I'm 57 years old and I plan to retire in 3 years. How long can I stay retired? And I said,
Is that a trick question?
no, I'm sorry. He said, can I retire? And I said,
Okay.
you absolutely can. The question is, how long can you stay retired?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
So afterwards, I found out he had refinanced his home. He had 22 years left on a mortgage. So he's going to be in his 70s when he pays off his mortgage. There's credit card debt that hasn't been gotten rid of. We have to have the resources to identify the things that say, this is how we do it, this is how likely it is we'll achieve it, so that we can be reasonable about what we dream of. And we do have to dream, because many of the dreams are achievable.
Yes.
They just need the right resources and the right circle of people to make it happen. And it's not just one person.
That's good. You also mentioned the stress test, and I want to ask you, if you were to parallel, how does your financial health affect your physical health?
They're great parallels. The one thing to keep in mind is that very often money is a stressor, and the absence of money can be a greater stressor. And those stressors in our health can influence blood pressure and lots of other health challenges. In a financial circumstance, they stress in a similar way. I'm thinking of almost 1 year ago, we had a government shutdown. How quickly we forget, right? We had a government shutdown.
That is true. That's very true.
And a client who has a young daughter was she shared this story with me. I said, how are you impacted by it? Because they're a 2-income earning family, but she worked for a government contractor. And I said, how did it impact you? She says, well, the government shut down, and a lot of them got paid, but we didn't get paid during that time. I go, oh. I said, so tell me what that was like. She says, you know, it was a good experience because it created a teaching moment. So their daughter, they sat her down, and they said, you know, we want to talk about this. Here is how the news every day impacts families. You know, very often we see something on the news, we go, oh my God, something terrible is happening on the news. But we have to ask ourselves, how does that story impact how we get along, whether we're okay? So they asked their daughter, they told their daughter how it impacted them. They said, you know, the government is shut down. Mom's not getting a check right now. Dad is still getting a check. But here's how we prepared for it. So we had done their plan. We'd already tested their plan. And what the parents had done is put their bonus checks in a separate account for a safety net. You remember one of the things we talked about a few minutes ago, one of the 4 things that everybody can do, the last thing on that list was creating a safety net, having an emergency fund. That was the emergency fund. So they had to tap it during that time. So their daughter, of course, felt, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. So she offered some of her money back from her allowance. She says, I didn't know. She says, are we okay? So here's a daughter asking one of those three questions. Are we okay? So when we get our sons and daughters to the point that they're aware that those questions need to be asked and answered, that's a win.
That's a good place.
And that's also an opportunity for her to feel, for them to feel really confident that she's on the road to being financially savvy.
Okay.
And able to contribute to the environment without, to the community without a burden on them.
You know what I like about sharing this moment with you today is I'm realizing that in the conversation of wealth, there is no one size fit all.
You're absolutely right.
Oftentimes I think that we think that there is a shoe and we're trying to fit into it rather than actually creating our own.
I think you just touched on something really important. And maybe it answers one of the questions we were talking about a little bit earlier, which is why do you think some people delay talking to an advisor? Perhaps there's this feeling out there that one size fits all, and it doesn't. So when we understand that a holistic advisor is going to be concerned about the whole person, about the whole family, about all of the goals, and have resources that can help. So when a person is concerned about whether it's identity theft protection or whether it's how do we manage this, how do I get my children educated financially, whether it's how do I plan for college when I do this, or what do I do with my bonus money? What do I do with money after my income tax refund comes in?
Yes, that's a big one.
Because in many cases, there is not as much thought to that question, what do I do with that money? And the other question, am I okay and will I be okay? They are very much related.
Okay, that's good. So many people have talked with you about attaining wealth and even debt elimination, I'm sure. Can you share a few stories of how you may have helped these individuals?
So I think it's fair to say I am not a specialist in debt elimination. When we talked about that example of the definition of wealth is what you own versus what you owe. If I added everything that I own and subtracted everything that I owed, that tells me what my net worth is.
Okay.
So when we look at helping people do that, in many cases, it's looking at the whole picture. How often does a person have a chance to take a look at everything? This is everything that I own and this is everything I owe. But there's a really important piece of it that might be helpful for somebody who is very much interested in eliminating debt. You know, very often, you know, if you were going to buy a car, and I like buying cars, I don't like to buy them very often, but I like buying cars. But one of the things that I ask, and many people ask, is what kind of engine does it have? You know, is it an SUV? Doing
V6,
SUV now.
V8.
Oh, you know about it. That's it. Or in some cases, 4 cylinders.
Yeah.
And I've not owned a 4-cylinder yet.
Yeah.
But the key is understanding all of those little pieces. When we owe somebody money, and I want to use the example of an appreciating asset again with a depreciating asset. When we owe credit card debt, the credit card company is going to use your credit score to determine the rate they charge you. Many people say, I didn't know that. That's why one of the 4 things that I talked about earlier is knowing your credit score, making sure you get the credit score for your son or daughter as well.
That is good to know.
But the other important thing is know your score and know which direction it's going in. Because if you own credit cards and you're working to get it paid off, and you're not paying attention, it's on the statement to the fact that they raised interest rates despite the fact that interest rates are going down elsewhere. That's the difference. They're sneaking it in. So you got to know what it is. So if you're eliminating debt, you want to understand which one is charging you the most. If your credit score is going up, one idea is to pick up the phone, call them, and say, you know what? My credit score is this number. This number is 40 points higher than it was 3 months ago. I need you to lower the interest rate.
That's good.
Interest rate, not payment. If they lower the payment, you're in it for the long haul. It's lowering the rate. Lower the rate, and in many cases, they will lower it because they know that your score has gone up. Somebody else is going to offer them a better rate than we got. They want you.
That's good to know.
With a credit card, there's only one winner.
That's good to know.
So that rate can continue to go up higher and higher. And I looked at some that are in the area of 25 to 27%. And that's, so that item that we bought that was 50% off, and we're taking 6 years to pay for it, we've paid more than twice the normal price of it.
Wow.
That's the difference, and that's the mindset that we have to have when we decide that we really want to accumulate wealth.
That's good to know. And how essential is building a team in achieving your wealth goals? So, and typically for you, can you give us an example of what does your wealth team look like? Or your dream team, I'll call them.
My personal dream team?
Yes.
Oh, my personal dream team is big now. It's a big dream team. And I think for a person who is looking to grow and achieve wealth, it's really important to have, and it's different for different people. So I want to go back to the example of the family that had a granddaughter with special needs. Mm-hmm. They need a person to do their trust documents and continue to update them. That is a trust attorney specializing in special needs trust. Okay. So that's one situation. So a dream team would normally have a tax advisor. Okay. And I said tax advisor, not tax preparer. And I'll talk about the difference if you'd like. The second thing is we need someone to draw up documents like powers of attorney, wills, trust. So that's a trust attorney or a trust advisor. Very often we have a medical advisor. And the medical advisor team may be a dentist, a doctor. It could be a neurologist. For a family that has a history of heart disease, there's probably a cardiac. So the team is just as unique as a person's needs are. And then we have spiritual advisors. And we have we'll have a spiritual advisor and an app where they do meditation. So we consider that technology plays a role in this in much the same way that an individual does. And a person who's traveling and doesn't have a spiritual advisor on hand can go to an app that does the meditations or an app that gives them inspiration. All important folks on that team. Think about the Olympics. When the dream teams for the Olympics are put together, they don't wait until it's time to play the game and say, hey, come into this game. Hey, can you do this? They work together. Because you never know what you're going to need. And someone can say, okay, we need you here. It's important for another reason, too. We are facing so many challenges in families where we need to help. And one example, and I've done probably 3 consults in the last year, where the issue of Alzheimer's has come. I mentioned it earlier, close to 6 million people in this country alone. That number is going to go to 50 million by 2030. That's a big number. So part of the dream team is also to put in place somebody that can kind of be available to call on, that may be close to a parent that can help out, and somebody who's already going through it, volunteer to be on their dream team and get agreement for them to be on yours when you need them for that purpose. So there's some really wonderful things, and it's really still all about relationships.
Yes, it is.
It's about working together.
I can definitely say, today I feel freed. One thing I can definitely say I've taken away from this conversation is I have bracketed myself for so long into trying to fit into someone else's shoe of what I've thought wealth to be. And today in this segment, I've learned it's what I create. So if it's me having enough, if it's having a retirement account or having a big home or making sure that I have enough money saved away from our children to come, it's my own wealth plan. It's not necessarily something that someone is designing for me. And so by me taking or even expressing my own personal goals of what my desires are, it allows you to go to work for me on my behalf to give me what's the best fit to bring about my goals.
Perfect.
That's what I love about this segment. And so Money Monday audience, for those of you who are tuning in, I hope that you're tuning in and listening to the fact that you can begin to start thinking about how to create your own idea of what wealth is for you. I almost wanted to say an ideology.
Yes.
Create your own ideology of what you believe wealth should be for you. It doesn't have to look like what wealth is for me, nor your neighbor. Get to know you, because this is a personal relationship between you and your coach. And if you're upfront and honest about the things that you truly desire and what you really want in life, your coach can put you on straight street for the Olympics. And I'm talking massive wealth returns. Be honest, be open. Gwen?
I couldn't have said it better. You just said it. And you said it so beautifully.
Thank you so much. We want to thank you so much for coming on Money Mondays. It's a pleasure to have someone of your caliber the vice president of Morgan Stanley. You better listen to this tape more than once, not just once, more than once. Meditate on this. She gave such great examples. Find yourself in those examples and figure out what your next move is. You no longer have to live in fear. You can start and change today. Today is your day to get on straight street.
Is it okay, Jill, if I share one other quick story?
Go ahead.
It's another ideology.
Okay.
I talked about Ida's teaching her children. Mm-hmm. She had a ritual for her daughters because she said they needed to be financially responsible because they might lose a husband to a war or something. When each of her daughters let their parents know that they were going to get married, she had one goal in mind. She would take a piece of linen fabric or something like it, and she would create for that daughter something that would be presented on her wedding day. Now, my own mother gave me one of Ida's handkerchiefs when I got married.
Wow.
But I didn't hear the story, and that's why I want to tell this story now. When her daughter came back and said, I have had a conversation with my husband-to-be, and he agrees that I will be responsible for the finances in the household so that I know what's going on in case he gets pulled away to war. This is coming from a woman born in 1875. When she heard that message from her daughter, she decided she would want to create something for it. The handkerchief is something she would give to them, and it represents strength through loss. Loss is something we all have to deal with, and sometimes better than others. But the daughter who was marrying would leave that family to strengthen a new family. This is one of Ida's handkerchiefs that she hand-tatted. Why am I talking about this? Woman born in 1875? Because Ida's youngest daughter passed away in 2010.
Okay.
When her daughter's estate was settled, I got Ida's handkerchief collection. So Ida was the one who was empowering people financially in the 1900s.
And you've taken on the
2100. Yeah, in the 21st century, I'm doing that. So there aren't many places I go that I'm not carrying a little Ida with me.
Wow.
So I say to the Money Monday audience that what's really important in your family, those are the things that you want to make sure that you make a part of your plan, because that's the inspiration that allows me to do what I do and to do it with joy. And it's really been a pleasure to be here with you.
We want to thank you for coming on Money Mondays today.
This
has truly been a joy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We want to hear from you. If there is a wealth creation topic you'd like for us to cover, email us at moneymondays@jbs.edu. Remember, in 2020, we are building for wealth, and we're bringing in a team of experts to help you get there. Submit your questions in advance to moneymondays@jbs.edu. Don't forget to join us every first and third Monday at noon for a new topic on financial literacy and wealth creation. Subscribe to our JBS YouTube channel. And as always, I'm your host, Jill Thompson, and I look forward to seeing you prosper.